listening to Offlimits. Liberal, irreverent, and really, really gay.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Offlimits show. Thanks for joining me tonight. Tonight, we've got a special guest. We've got Jack Mackenroth, whom you may know previously from Project Runway from years ago, as well as his activism in the HIV community. He's also a fashion designer, obviously, and a model, an actor, swimmer. He does a little bit of everything. So I thought we'd talk to him tonight about what's going on with him and his ventures and things he's got going on with him, and find out a little bit more about him. So, Jack, are you there? Jack, are you there?
Yep.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So I wanted to talk to you about your, several things, actually. But first of all, obviously, let's kind of introduce people to who you are. I'm sure they know you, obviously, especially by your beautiful face. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. You obviously are most well known, I think, for having been on Project Runway years ago.
Right.
How did you come to be on Project Runway? What was that journey like?
Yeah, I came to New York God, I'm going to age myself so badly, but
it's okay.
I moved to New York in 1990 to go to Parsons School of Design, where they actually filmed the show for a long time.
Yes.
And, I was just a working fashion designer in the industry, and most people kind of have, I think because of Project Runway, have a kind of skewed vision and idea of what fashion designers really do, but I just worked my way from like being an assistant through various levels, and I never really did super high-end stuff, and I never worked for myself. I worked for Tommy Hilfiger, I worked for Levi's, I worked for American Eagle. Like, that was kind of my tier. The job I had right before I auditioned for the show was I was the creative director at a company called Weatherproof, which is mainly outerwear. Al Rooker used to be our spokesperson.
Yeah.
Because he's so weatherman. And it was a fine job. You know, I made a really good salary, but I was really boring, kind of.
Yeah.
And then right about that time, Project Runway started, the show, and I was glued to the television, like, ever since the very first season. I was like, the show's amazing. And so I actually auditioned for season 3. And I didn't make it on. And I was primarily a menswear designer, and the show is obviously women's wear.
Yes.
They had totally ironically, they had a menswear challenge on our season.
Wow.
Which was a fiasco, and they've never to ever do it again, because it was menswear is all about tailoring and nuance.
And nobody can do that?
It's way more difficult than women's wear, believe it or not. So, I auditioned for season 3. I didn't make it on. And then I auditioned for season 4, and the audition process is crazy. It's about 4 months long.
Oh my God.
Yeah. First, it's like filling out, 30-page interview, or, a 30-page written questionnaire. And then, if they call you back or you keep staying in the process, you go through various, like, critiques and callbacks, and then you go show up in person with a bunch of your designs. They used to sort of televise that part.
Yeah, they did.
Sometimes they do now, and sometimes they don't. They didn't televise our season of, I think it's called like Road to the Runway or something like that.
Yeah.
And I met with Tim and all the panel of judges, and then you have 48 hours after that to make a video, because they don't want you to make some crazy produced thing.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then you just wait. And I remember I was coming out of my gym, and I got a phone call from the production company, and they're like, "You're on season 4 of Project Runway."
Oh my God!
I screamed really loud.
Of course.
And then they told me, "And you're sworn to secrecy, and you can't tell anyone."
Oh my God!
So,
oh my God! How hard was that?
It was so bizarre. So that's kind of how it all happened. Of course, I called my mom and my sister immediately and told them, but this was also 2006, I believe. So, it's not like Twitter hadn't even happened.
Right. Barely. Yeah.
Facebook, to give you an idea, when I came off the show, we all had MySpace accounts.
Oh my God.
we were all posting all our information and stuff on MySpace, and then when everybody started switching over to Facebook, I was like, are you kidding me? I've spent like hours and hours and hours building this goddamn MySpace page. So So yeah, but that was pretty much it, and it was interesting. Like, dude, it was a crazy experience.
Well, yeah, and yeah, so it sounds like in some ways it's pretty grueling just getting on the show alone, and then getting on the show itself.
Yeah. It's to get there. Well, because the thing is, it's a highly produced show, and what you see is not exactly always.
Yeah, tell me about that. I'd like to hear about that. What's that about?
Yeah, well, so I think, in defense of the designers that appear on the show, everything that we do is legit. 100% real.
Right.
There's basically how it works is they give you a challenge, and they say you have half an hour to go to Mood, and literally we have a half an hour to buy fabric, and if you've never been to Mood or don't know anything about it,
huge.
It's 5 floors of fabric.
Yeah.
And we had to pick out everything we need, and they literally give you a half hour. So you're running around screening.
Wow.
And, they put us in a workroom, and we travel in a pack because, this is all, also, I don't know how it's changed since it's gone from Bravo to Lifetime.
Yeah.
But, the show was so popular at the time that we had stalkers that would follow us around, would sit outside Parsons. So even if you were eliminated, you still had to stick with the group because they would know who was voted off.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and then they would give us a challenge by the time, and they would put us in the workroom at, let's say, noon, and they'd say, you have till midnight, finish it.
My
and
God.
that was it. And so, yeah, and then the other thing I think that people are always shocked to find out is there were no days off. So when it looks like a week on television, it's actually 2 days.
Oh, my God.
So we would have a challenge, and then we would go home that night and sleep for full 4 hours.
And another challenge.
And then get up at 5. The cameras would come wake us up at 5. And then we would go back to the workroom and finish up whatever, and then we'd go into the makeup and hair thing with the models, and then we would film the runway show, which would take the rest of the evening. It looks like it's very fast,
right?
But of course, the models all walk 4 or 5 times each, so they can get all the proper footage, and then the critiques last for like 3 hours.
Oh my God!
Just standing there. Oh yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah, they make everyone cry, and they're super mean. And I was happen to be really lucky.
Yeah.
I don't know if you really remember my season.
I remember your season. Yeah, I do.
I never was in the bottom 3, and I won the mentor challenge, and then I left in the middle of the 5th challenge.
Right. Yes.
So I never had a bad critique ever. But people cried, and they would tell you, it's for television. They want good ratings. So
of course.
Nino is known as kind of the mean one, even though she's my favorite one. She's super nice in real life.
Oh, really?
But she would rip you apart because, they want good TV. So it was pretty crazy. So yeah, the whole season from start to finish films in about 35 days.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
So that's like an impossible situation. I mean, it's amazing to me that anybody puts anything out in that situation at all. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I also really think that the casting is so crucial because you have to be able to sew. I mean, the majority of fashion designers that I know don't know how to sew.
They have somebody else do it.
You kind of know basic construction, and so you need to know how to sew because we made everything ourselves, but from scratch. You have to know how to pattern make, you have to know how to draft, you have to have good taste, and then even more than all that, you have to be good television.
Right.
So finding that skill set is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And there was a guy on my season I remember named Marion, who you won't remember because he was boring. And they actually, and get this, and no one's really supposed to know this, but whatever, they can't sue me at this point.
Exactly.
But they had the order in which we would be voted off was decided before we even got on the show.
Okay, stop. What?
Yep.
Wait.
Yep. So the reason I know that is because in the first week at some point we go to a studio, or we went to a studio in, I think it was in New Jersey, it might have been Brooklyn, I don't know, we were so tired at that point, where we do all the commercials and all the promo and we shoot all that stuff. And so there's production people all over, and we're not allowed to talk to them. We can only talk to each other. That was the whole thing. So one of the producers, and we're bored half the time. We're sitting around.
Sure,
right?
you
so
are.
One of the producers had left this book, and one of the people in our group picked it up, and it had our bios, what order they thought we'd be getting voted off on, like all these insider secrets.
Oh my
and like,
God.
yeah. So
it's
I
not.
I think that's totally fluid.
Yeah.
But you know, for example, they saw this kid named Marion
Mm-hmm.
from all the stuff he'd submitted and all his portfolio. They thought he was going to be the winner.
Uh-huh.
And when he got in front of the camera, he was like Cindy Brady. He was completely silent. So he was the second person voted off.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. Yeah. Oh my God. Wow. So do you think, so you said the way you worded it was the order in which they thought people would be voted off, meaning that's how they wanted it to happen? Or do you think that's how they just sort of planned it? I mean, what do you mean by that?
So this is my theory, is that, you know, it's quote unquote reality TV.
Yeah.
So, you know, but of course the production company's job is to number one, make good television and get good ratings.
Of course.
And number two, be cost effective. So they are trying to control and script as much of it as they can while keeping us in the dark.
Gotcha.
So they, you know, the more they have it controlled, the easier it is for them to edit. And so what they would do, like there's a couple tricks, like, you know how I haven't watched the show in a few years now,
really?
But in the olden days, it always seemed like whatever Tim said would happen on the runway. Well, they would back edit him, so they would go and figure out what was happening on the runway, which may or may not have been influenced by the producers or whatever, and then they would go and edit. Tim would spend like half an hour with each of us, but it looks like 5 minutes.
He does.
So in somewhere in there's always a kernel of what happens at the end. So it's all editing and producing and, you know, not to burst anyone's bubble, because I think in reality everyone knows that it's not all real.
Quote unquote, right, yeah.
Yeah. But it was pretty crazy.
Well, I know you said you don't watch the show really now, but there was I think it was last season, after the show type reunion type thing or whatever they did, and somebody had actually made that accusation stating that the show is somewhat rigged, and Tim said bullshit or something like that. I mean, he was something completely out of character, but they aired that, and he was very taken aback by that. So so you feel, in your opinion, what your experience was, that there's definitely parts of it that are predetermined.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
I know for a fact.
Okay.
I mean, of course, it's Tim's show.
Right.
Mean, what's he going to say? Of course,
Exactly.
I'm sure he's contracted to say all that. We had to sign our lives away.
I'm
we had
sure
to
you
sign
did.
this crazy disclosure agreement, you know, that they could sue us if we leaked anything.
Oh my!
They would sue us for $1 million, and you know, none of us had $1 million. So, yeah. I mean, for example, I heard from some of the other designers that were on, I think, the first season of All Stars, where Mondo won.
Yes.
Mondo Guerra.
Yes.
Well, they all signed contracts that he was going to win before the show started.
Okay, stop! You're blowing my mind.
Yeah,
oh
God.
What?
So, and apparently what I've heard is that he actually was the only one who wasn't in on it.
Oh.
So, because what happened with his season is, the season he was on the show, I think it was season 8 or whatever. You know, he was the fan favorite and slated to win, and then for some reason,
he didn't.
This girl named Gretchen won.
I remember, yeah.
And I think it was because a woman hadn't won in a while, and it had recently switched to Lifetime, and that's their demographic, and they wanted a woman to win, and all that stuff. So people were really pissed and thought Mondo got cheated. So, like, immediately after that, they came out with an all-star show.
So they bring him
and he
back.
just magically won. So, you know, it is what it is. It's still, you know, it was still good TV.
Yeah, it is very good TV, and that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. But getting back to you, when you left the show, I remember because of a health scare. Wasn't that the reason? I can't remember exactly. It was something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was. Yeah, I got it's called MRSA. It's a
bad infection. Yes.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
And I got it in my nose. And I think I attribute it to the fact that literally we would get home at night at 2 and we would wake up at 5. And granted, I was only on the show 12 days.
Right.
Because, you know, it's have it. I think I made it through 4.5 challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So it blew my face up so fast. I mean, we actually left set and I went to the doctor and, got an IV for a day, and then I came back, and then we tried to make it work, but it just wasn't happening. And so I finally was like, I have to leave. And so that was rough.
So
but,
you were disappointed. I mean, it was a disappointment for you then, definitely, to have to do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, things happen. I don't know if they happen for a reason, but you make the best. You make the best out of
what happens,
whatever circumstance you're given, and I'm the guy that people remember because they remember. I say to people all the time, people are like, "Oh, you look familiar," and I'm not that guy who goes like, "Yeah, I was on Project Runway 18 years ago." So I'm like, oh, and then if it comes out that I was on the show, they're like, "Oh, right. What season were you?" And I was like, I was that guy on season 4 that left in the middle. And they're like, oh my God, I totally cried when you left.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, that was me.
Well, yeah. And so speaking of, I mean, we were talking about, so you're definitely a huge HIV advocate, and obviously that's great and wonderful. And how did you've been positive since you were like, I think you said, I can't remember. I read 19 or something. It was younger, right? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah,
20. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so now that you're in the age you are now, whatever that might be.
I'll be 45 next month.
Oh my God. I hope I look as good as you at 45. Jesus Christ. You're amazing. Wow. Well, you have nothing to worry about. Well, I think that's great. But I mean, so when you first came out, or you first came to the conclusion or realization that you had HIV, versus now, how are you dealing with it now versus when you were diagnosed, which I assume was in the 90s or early 90s, or?
Yeah, I was I seroconverted. I track it back to 89.
Okay.
And then I found out in 1990 when I actually developed, they call it AIDS because I had an opportunistic infection, although my T cells were
low.
Fine. And actually I spoke to someone recently that said they're going to try to start phasing out the word AIDS, especially in the U.S. because...
Oh, really?
Because it's real... Because
stigmatized.
Because basically now it's a chronic illness and it's basically living with HIV if you're medicated. So anyway, that's another whole discussion. In 1990... everyone was dying. I mean, it was a death sentence.
Exactly.
So I pretty much figured I had between, 2 and 5 years to live. Mm-hmm. So what do you do with that information? It's like, okay, I'm a kid. Like, I just moved to New York. I'm going to design school. I kind of freaked out, obviously, for a little while. I actually was one of those people who didn't. I told my best friend that same day.
That's good.
And he was like, oh, my God. And, and then, actually I remember... I'm on a swim team, and I've been a swimmer since I was a kid. I went to swim practice that day. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a weird, it was, I think I was a little bit in shock. Honestly, I don't remember. It was 24 years ago. Yeah. So I just remember thinking, oh shit. And I don't know if I can swear on the show or not, but,
no, you can. This is trust me, this is the kind of show you can curse on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I freaked out about it for a little while. I think I was always fairly open about it. People knew. Also back then, a lot of people were dying, so it was the gay culture was more compassionate, I think, and less, judgmental, and less the stigma wasn't so crazy as it is now. Yeah. So I, and then I had a partner named Greg Butler who passed away in 1996, and so that's when I told my family. But by then I was already on, there was a medication called Comavir, and there was another one that actually worked. I've always responded really well to medication. So, I told my mom, and of course she was really upset and whatever, and there still wasn't any, the medications we have now still were not out and about. So, but I was doing really well, and the fact that I was doing really well was a bit of a consolation. So,
well, that's good.
And then in terms of now, now it's really interesting. I actually work, and we'll get into the whole HIV Equal campaign and what I'm doing now, but I work for a company called World Health Clinicians, and I do PR and marketing stuff for them, and I developed that campaign, and they actually, the lead physician, Gary Blix, who's our chief medical officer, actually last week was out at a medical conference, and the doctors have been just coming. You can look it up in the media. It's been circulating. Doctors have been doing a 2-year study, which it's still ongoing, but some of the data has been released with serodiscordant couples, where one's HIV positive and on medication and undetectable, and the other one is HIV negative,
and it doesn't transmit,
and they practice completely unprotected sex.
Right.
But not monogamous, unprotected sex, where one partner is HIV positive and one is HIV negative. And it's basically been determined that if the person is HIV positive, is on meds, and maintains undetectable status, meaning like you can't find it in their blood, that you cannot transmit the virus.
Right, I read that.
So it's actually really important data that I don't know why it's not more front page news, but HIV has sort of dropped off the radar. But it's really promising. You know, my boyfriend's negative, and I've actually maintained that sort of for a long time. It makes sort of logical sense that if you can't locate HIV in the person's bodily fluids, then how do they transmit it?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing. I read that too. And speaking of today, so what about my question? I guess would be, how do you feel about the kind of way? I think it's a generational thing. I mean, at least I know I'm 38 and I'll be 39 soon, so we're somewhat in the same range. And I think, you know, when I was in the 90s, I knew, oh my God, you got to practice safe sex. Oh my God. I was like a big deal, and because the previous generation, the 80s, were all dying of AIDS and et cetera, and so it was a big deal in the 90s. Now, the millennials, I guess you'll say, or whatever, the kids today, because I'm getting old too, they're like not as concerned with getting HIV. They think of it as something that's not a big deal. And even though it is a chronic thing, don't you still feel that it's not something you should want to try to obtain or get, or, you know what I mean, to practice safe sex? Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's not a right answer. It's really tricky because it's a double-edged sword. You want to say to people that are HIV positive or might be, and take away the fear of testing, and say, like, listen, hey, it's a really manageable illness, and you can take one pill a day, and I mean, that's all true. And I actually say, you know, if you find out, but there's a lot of ifs in this whole equation. Like, if you find out, and if you get tested, like within the, you know, fairly soon after you convert, and then if you get on medications pretty readily, you can lead a normal life and expect a normal lifespan. I think it's like 2 years less than an HIV negative person, something crazy like that. But, you know, on the flip side, wouldn't you rather not have to take medication? And when you know, first of all these medications get pushed through really quickly. I'm on stuff that was only been out for 5 years, so they don't really, I don't think I have any side effects, but they don't really know long term. I mean, everything, you know, it may come out 20 years from now that there's a lot of issues that go on that they don't know about. So, I mean, I just, basically for me, the message that I really drill into people's heads is get tested often and, you know, regularly, and just know your status. Always know your status, because
that's power.
And you're either negative, which is awesome, and you should stay negative, or you're positive, which the treatments are great.
Yes,
and then you can get on treatment. So, and you know, with this new knowledge we have that if you're undetectable, you can't transmit the virus. Well, then, you know, the 50,000 new cases a year, that's been pretty static since we've had all this information, and we've been pushing condoms and all that stuff. The transmission rate really hasn't gone down. So if everyone got tested, it would like plummet. We should all be either on meds or negative. Like, so yeah, but you know, certainly if you're negative, stay negative. Believe me, it's one less thing to worry about.
Well, yeah, and I kind of think of it like people who have maybe like diabetes or something. It's like, okay, you know, you don't want to get diabetes, so this is how you prevent it. So try to prevent it. But if you do get diabetes, then you can control it with this type of medication or whatever. It's the same thing, I think, with HIV today. Wouldn't you agree, to some degree anyway? Yeah,
I do. I mean, I think that there's a different component for HIV just because what often now I find with the young kids, and people reach out to me like all the time, probably.
That's wonderful.
I get two or three Facebook or emails a day, which it's a lot, but it's good. But yeah, what people will find also is like, do you want to be ostracized by your own community? Because the stigma is the real disease here.
Right.
You know, I think Peter Staley, who's an amazing activist and was, you know, one of the founders of ACT UP, and people can look him up. He's amazing. But he just wrote a really great article, I think, for the New York Times, where it was initially published, about the whole gay-on-gay shaming and calling people like Truvada whores if they take PrEP, and it's all this stuff where it's like, listen, within our own community, we're judging that nobody wants to be honest about their status. Like, if you figure in any major metropolitan city like New York, San Francisco, LA, whatever, 1 in 5 gay men is HIV positive.
Wow.
And, right. So that's 20% of
that's
the gay
male
male population. And how many people do you know that talk openly about their HIV status?
Oh, exactly. No, yeah.
None.
No, yeah.
Like, literally nobody. I mean, the fact that you're talking to me, who's some old D-list reality hack from, 8 years ago, and like me and Mondo and a handful of other people, and Greg Louganis and Magic Johnson, there's like 12, quote unquote famous people that will talk about their HIV status, and that just goes to show you how strong the stigma still is.
So how do we as a community overcome the stigma of HIV, or just in general? I think that how is it we can help that move forward?
I don't know. I mean, I get asked that question all the time, and I just don't think there's an easy answer. I think, with anything, like let's say you can compare it to gay marriage or the civil rights movement or anything where there's change, and it's about visibility.
Yeah.
Like, so how did gay people get marriage equality rights? Like, I know we're not there yet, but it was familiarity and people that are, are in opposition, understanding that we're not going to change marriage for them and that we're not a threat. And so I think the same thing really needs to be done with HIV, and people need to start talking about it and come out about it and say like, hey, and people will be like, oh, you're the first HIV positive person I've ever met. I'm like, no, I'm not.
That you know of.
You just don't know.
Yes.
Like, we're everywhere.
Yes.
Just like gay people would say, yeah, we're everywhere. You just don't know it. And I'm like, yeah, we are, because statistics show that we are. So, it's about visibility. It's about, that's why I keep yammering on about it and trying to be visible and out there and talk about it. But I don't know if it's going to change so much. My personal belief is there will be, there's all this talk now about a functional cure and shots that keep people undetectable for, months at a time. And I honestly believe that the cure and or a vaccination or something like that will happen before people stop judging.
I agree. Yes, I agree with you. And do you feel proud to sort of be somewhat, I don't know if I can put it this way, somewhat of the HIV positive poster boy in the gay community, or are you sick of being that, or what is it you feel about that? Yeah, no,
proud is a good word, I guess. I think I've helped a lot of people. I mean, I know I have. On a one-on-one basis, and I've had people write me letters that say like I was going to kill myself, especially from countries that aren't quite as developed and the information's not out there as much. They find out this thing, and then we think the stigma's out here. In a lot of other countries, it's like even homosexuality is illegal. So
I know
people find out and they're like, oh, I was going to kill myself, and then I Googled it online and I found out about you and you look the way you do, and I was like, oh my God, I can maybe have a normal life. So that's great.
Good.
I wish there were more people in doing what I do, and there are, of course, I don't mean to knock that, the activists that are not necessarily someone you have seen on TV. So there are a lot of people doing a lot of really great work. I just think it's the number one health issue for gay men right now, and no one's talking about it really in large quantities. So, but I'm proud to do what I do. I mean, it's interesting, after Project Runway, my options were sort of, all right, do I go back in design? And I've now had this voice in the HIV arena, and then Merck Pharmaceuticals approached me about doing this HIV education campaign. I did it for 4 years, and so then it was like, well, okay, what do I want to do with myself? I kind of did the design thing, like, am I going to go back and sit in a cubicle and work at a boring company? Or do I keep doing what I'm doing? So that's how I kind of got the job at World Health Nations, because I wanted to keep working in the HIV field, because I do think what I have to say resonates with people and makes a difference, and so
that's great. I agree with you. I think you've made a difference, and that's what's wonderful. I think that anybody who can make a difference with their voice is incredible. So that's wonderful that you've been able to do that.
Thank you.
And what about? I remember there was a website that you had started called Voltage a while back. Is it called Voltage? I think that's what it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Let's pimp that out.
Yes.
No, it's great. I mean, it's for your listeners, it's voltage.com, and it's VOLTTAGE. The initial logo was the T's were like positive signs.
Yeah.
So it was, but we scrapped that, and if you look up just regular Voltage with one T, it's an electrical company, so that's not what you're looking for.
Okay.
But basically what it was my answer to the common complaint and question that I get from HIV positive guys that are like, oh my God, dating is so hard. When do I disclose? I feel so, like I'm totally going to be judged. And unfortunately, that is the reality for a lot of people. And I don't know if you know the term zero sorting.
Yes.
But it doesn't, well, first of all, I'll explain what it is, but it doesn't work. But it's a practice that actually HIV positive people do it too, but for a different reason. But it's the act of trying to segregate and only sleep with people of your own status. So people put in their negative HIV, negative people put in their profile, negative EV2, all that stuff, which it's silly because it, first of all, you're trusting someone to tell you, like, unless you go with them and get their HIV results. Like, it's really a moot question.
Exactly.
But so, the other thing it just does is it actually encourages people to lie if they are positive, because you feel judged. And so it's just a lose-lose proposition. So Voltage was created for HIV positive men. There's a few other HIV dating sites, but they're all inclusive, meaning, which is great, but it's women and it's bisexual and trans, and which I love being inclusive, but it wasn't what I would look for.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just the premise of Voltage was that we actually don't even ask HIV status. We just assume that you are, because that's what you should do in life.
That's right. That's a great point. That's
so
great.
It's just really turned out to be great. I know we started a year ago, and so something. There were over 10,000, 12,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but it's all from word of mouth. We don't do any advertising. It's totally free to join. So, and I mean, I know I've heard from a lot of people that even if they're not looking to date or hook up necessarily, that they feel like, they can chat with people and ask questions, and it's become a really good forum for that as well.
That's wonderful.
We have actually a blog attached to it called Voltage Buzz, and we print, we have 3 or 4 contributors. It could be, it can and it will be a lot more robust and more interesting and have a lot more content, but it's me and two web design guys, and we all have other jobs.
Of course, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. And that was a few years ago, right? You started that, I think, a few years ago, or?
I started it, I think it was October of, not this past October, but the October before. So it's been, a year and a half now.
Oh, it's only been that long. Okay, it seems longer because I remember reading about it, but that's great though. And I think that you're right. I think that's a great way to look at it. Just assuming anybody is HIV positive is the way you should be, because as you stated, people will lie, or people will not know, or people will think they know and they don't know, or their status will change overnight because, they sleep with someone after they've gotten the results, they don't know.
Yeah.
So that's a great way.
That's a great irony now, especially with this. I knew the data that came out. I've been consuming that for a long time, but now actually it's interesting. It's like if we're just talking about HIV, an undetectable HIV positive person is the safest person you can have sex with.
Yeah,
because we know what our status is, and we're told you, and you know what I mean.
Yes.
So everyone else has a lot of there's variables that they may or may not be telling the truth, or they may not even know, or when was their last test, and that's kind of the strange irony of all this. But the other thing is, it's like, I also don't want to people are the one of the arguments that comes fairly quickly after, you can't get HIV from an undetectable person, and that's like, oh, well, are you going to take that risk? And plus, there's a lot of other things out there that you can catch.
Exactly.
If you're out and about and you're not in a monogamous relationship, you just do what humans do, and it shouldn't be shameful. Like,
right.
you want to sleep with a lot of people, then sleep with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, like, know that you either should use condoms,
yes,
or you're going to catch something.
Protect yourself. Yes.
That's your choice, and I really try not to put a judgment on that at all.
I agree.
Like, some people don't want to use condoms, and they're never going to. There is that group of people, but just know that's okay. But you will catch a venereal disease.
Eventually, for sure.
You will.
It's
statistic. It's statistic.
Yes,
so.
yes. Yeah, because there's, like you said, there's many things to worry about other than just HIV. There's syphilis, there's gonorrhea. I mean, there's like, it goes on and on, herpes.
On and on.
Yeah, so I mean, hello. Yeah, and I don't even know, honestly, today, considering the other things you can get, that HIV, I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the severity of the disease, but is even the most horrible thing you can get among some of the things you could get otherwise. I mean, seriously, there's some really bad things that don't necessarily have cures. So, but that's great. What about the HIV Equal campaign you were talking about earlier? Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, so about, I think it was June, I went to this company called World Health Clinicians. They're based out, you can go to World Health Clinicians, it's a mouthful.org. But I went out and spoke for their ribbon cutting ceremony. It's their nonprofit organization, and they're attached to a clinic and a pharmacy, and they have like a community group. It's an LGBT center up there. And actually, I'm out of Norwalk, Connecticut, so I commute an hour and a half each morning.
Oh, wow. That's a long commute.
Like, feel bad. For that, through HIV, you can feel sorry for me because I have to do that 5 times a day.
Yeah, exactly.
But I went and spoke at their ribbon cutting ceremony, and Gary Blick, who's the chief medical officer who I mentioned, pulled me aside and was like, "We'd love to kind of maybe talk about working in a larger capacity with you." And I was like, "I'm game." Like, I've been working for myself doing that gig with Merck and working for myself on and off for 5 years, and I was kind of ready to go back and just have a normal job and a paycheck that was coming in on a regular basis.
Sure.
So yeah, there was a guy there already doing their creative content named Thomas Evans, who's a photographer, and I'd actually shot with him before in the city, and I knew who he was, and they wanted to start some sort of HIV outreach photo campaign. They didn't really know what that looked like, and I came in, and actually I thought of that for the program in 48 hours. In 2 days.
Wow.
I was like, what about something, I was like, HIV negative, HIV positive. I'm like, what if we did something like HIV Equal? And so it's, our website is HIV Equal, like spelled out EQUAL.org.
Okay.
And the closest thing to compare it to is the business model is the No Hate campaign.
Yes.
And actually, Adam Booth's guy called him before we launched our campaign, and I'm like, listen, we're going to be drawing comparisons to yours, and if you're not cool with it, like,
yes, let me know.
Let me know. But he gave us our blessing and actually posed for the campaign. But what happens is the cool thing about HIV Equal, it's a photo campaign. People come, and wherever we're holding our events, they show up. There's an intake process. They get a rapid HIV test.
Yes.
Before they get the results, as the results are processing, they participate in the photo shoot. And it's similar to No Hate in the sense that, so we have a pink sticker that's HIV Equal with the equal sign, playing on the, positive or negative sort of thing. They get photographed, and then they pick a status word, because we were kind of reclaiming the word status, like, Facebook status, HIV status, whatever. So mine was fearless, and then you get your results back. It's all the testing part of it is all very confidential. And actually, if you're already HIV positive and you are concerned about it or don't want to disclose, you're only disclosing to one person. It's just like you're going in for an HIV test, but we don't retest positive people.
I see.
So, because I know some people were like, I want to be in the campaign, but I'm weird, and I'm like, I got you, girl. Like, don't worry. But yeah, and then the photos are shared through social media and our website, and we have an Instagram account and a Twitter account, and it's been really amazing. We launched October 15th, and I think we've tested and photographed over 400 people, and we're just getting started. So
that's great.
We have an event on Friday at City Purchase. We are going to the Two Colors event at UConn.
Oh, wow.
The next weekend. We have an event the end of May in New York City. Then we go to P-Town, and then we're doing DC, and then I think we'll do a couple other local events in Connecticut, and then we're ending up World AIDS Day. We're doing a big thing in San Francisco, and that's our first calendar year. So then we're going to try to
spread out.
Spread it out, and it's really been amazing.
So basically, I mean, really, the campaign itself is fantastic, but also the fact that you're testing people. Everybody's getting tested.
Yeah, that's our goal. I mean, our target market is really the young men who have sex with men, like 16 to 34. I mean, that's like 90% of the new HIV cases in the U.S. So we just were trying to think of how do we reach that generation of people that, are so tapped into social media and so tapped into like Instagram and selfies and all that stuff. I'm like, why don't we take pictures of them? So, and Adam Buska, like, I love him. He's a great guy. And that, I think what he did, I think the No Hate campaign changed the national dialogue about marriage equality.
Oh, yeah.
It totally did. So we're just hoping to do, a small percentage of the same thing with HIV stigma and HIV testing. And we're really out there testing people. And, that part of it's totally confidential. I want to reiterate, it's not at all about whether you're HIV positive or negative.
Right.
Our tagline is actually, everybody has an HIV status. Mm-hmm. We're all HIV equal, which is true. We all have an HIV status.
That's right.
We're either negative or positive, but we're all equally valuable. So
absolutely.
It shouldn't be, you shouldn't be judging someone because of their HIV status.
Absolutely. You should talk to, not that she's completely available or whatever, but Annie Lennox, you know who she is, I'm sure. She's a very huge advocate.
She's on my short list.
Yes.
If you have her number.
No, I don't. But if I did, I'd give it to you because she's a huge advocate.
There is, first of all, we are photographing everyone. It's not about celebrities, but it is about celebrities because celebrities get the media attention.
Exactly.
So, we reached out to a lot of Margaret Cho, who I know you've interviewed.
Yes,
love her.
But, yes.
They're all, people are busy, celebrities are busy and they're doing lots of things. And, we're a nonprofit. We're not paying anyone.
Right.
So when it works out, it's great. We've had some success. Especially considering the first outreach was nobody had heard of the campaign. And it was sort of based on the fact that people trusted me because I am a fairly trusted voice within the HIV community. So we photographed Billy Porter from Kinky Boots. We photographed Bianca Del Rio, who's a friend of mine who's on this season of RuPaul's Drag Race. So by the way, you should go on your show because she's freaking hilarious.
I would love it.
A lot of reality stars. We photographed the congressman and the senator from Connecticut.
That's great.
A lot of New York-based nightlife, and we went out to LA and shot Selena Luna.
Is there a way?
Model. Was there what?
I was going to say, is there a way for you to? I mean, I know it's it's a nonprofit and everything, but eventually or ultimately, is your goal possibly to have it kind of a national type of more of a presence in more locations than just where you are yourself? Do you know what I mean?
Well, what we want to do in the way that No Hate did it is we want New York City to be our home base.
Gotcha.
Kind of because everyone comes in and out of New York City.
Ground zero.
So eventually.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what that looks like yet. Literally, we only started 6 months ago, and it's just
it's already done
so
wonderfully.
Crazy.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that's our hope, and we have a lot of plans in our mind. I don't know where that's all going to go. But we're pretty mobile, and that's what I know if you're pretty familiar with Adam Buska and his partner, I think it's Jeff Parsley and No Hate. They have such a great brand now that they just post on Facebook.
Yeah.
Hey, coming to Austin, Texas, coming to Dallas, and then 500 people show up and they just shoot all day.
It's fantastic.
That's where we would like to get.
That was my question.
It's a little bit of a harder sell because we are also
dealing with
requiring people to take an HIV test.
Right, exactly.
So, people should be very okay with that and should want to know their status. But of course, there's a lot of
but that's also the
baggage that goes along with that.
That's also the good part of it, though. Even though people may be uncomfortable about it, some people initially, the fact that they'll get their picture taken and all the fun part of it may actually encourage them to do so. And I think that's what's great about what you're doing. So that's great.
Yeah, and that's really the whole point. And you would be so surprised. I mean, that's what everyone says when they're done. And like, I mean, people like myself, and I'm assuming you, and people that are like fairly well educated and of a certain generation and whatever, we know our status. We get tested on a regular basis because we know it's important. But the young kids, like we run into like 25, 26, 27-year-old gay guys who are like, oh, I've never been tested before.
Isn't it fascinating?
Like,
it's like
wow.
crazy.
and then we test a lot of straight women and stuff like that who think it doesn't affect them. And they're like, listen, it's a mouth swab. They just rub a Q-tip on the inside of your mouth, and 20 minutes later, it's active or non-reactive. So it's pretty easy, and you should be doing it. Like, if you're a gay guy, I'm sorry, you should be doing it
every 6 months.
You can do it at home.
Yeah, you can do it at home, exactly.
You should be doing it every 3 months.
No, Jack, that's what you need to do. You need to make a little self-home kit that you can market with yourself on it. That would sell. And then these young guys would buy it. Trust me, they'll buy it then.
Well, maybe Aura Quick should make their package like more sexier.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
A men for men sex pack. Or
yes. And leave some, I don't know, some flavored lube in there or something. I don't know, whatever. But congratulations, celebrate your status. Anyway, but no, look, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. You're just a delight. You're fun to talk to. You're intelligent, and I love what you're doing with HIV Equal, as well as Voltage and your voice. It's fantastic. So I really thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And send me, when you're done, send me all the links to whatever, and I'll post it over. I'm a social media whore.
Oh, awesome. I will.
Yeah, people can follow me on Twitter. I think I have 90,000 followers now. And
thank you.
Facebook, and I'm so super easy to find. So, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, thank you so much. And by the way, I'll try to get in touch with, was it Bianca you mentioned from RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yeah, I have her information. If you can trade me, I'll give you a Bianca for a Margaret show. How's that?
That sounds great. We'll try that. Okay. Thanks, Jack. Have a good day.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. That was Jack Mackenroth. Great guy, fun to talk to. And I love what he's doing. I love what he's doing with his voice, what he's using his voice for, what he's kind of parlayed his fame or whatever from Project Runway into doing something really meaningful and great for the gay community and the world community, working for AIDS and HIV education, speaking out about it and speaking out about what the realities are and trying to educate people is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Plus, he's gorgeous to look at. Of course, that helps as well. So it's fun to listen to someone gorgeous speaking. So anyway, thanks for Jack for listening, coming and calling to the show. Thank you so much, Jack. And I'll be back on Sunday next week. We'll be interviewing more people. So be sure you tune into that. Thanks a lot. Good night, everybody.